Hello, folks. I am Joshua Gonzalez. I am the Education Director at Abundant Housing LA. And this is our third, in a weird way, this is our third session for the ADU workshop series with Andrew Slocum, who is an ADU developer and the founder and principal of Green Development Company. He is taking us through the ADU process. Okay, so everything you could ever want to know. He's lining us up with great guest speakers, a lot of expertise coming to the table here. So whether it is for advocacy purposes or whether you want to build your own ADU, this is the place to be. So I'm going to hand it over to Andrew Slocum, who's going to give you a little bit of an intro to today's programming and also introduce our guest speakers. So, Andrew, please take it away.
Thank you for the introduction, Josh. Hi, everyone. Yes, our order has been kind of interesting here. So number 3, for those who have been following on live, is kind of number 2, but we will make sure that number 2 does happen and people can come and join and meet us in person. It'll be in person again. And for those who are watching the recorded version, you can see number 2 when it's posted online. So thank you. Today's workshop is about the construction process. The difficulty of getting plans approved. And from our first workshop with your architect, your engineer, and your Title 24, you've made it past that task. And now you're here. You're ready to start construction. And maybe you don't know what to do. Maybe you've never done this before. Maybe you're a pro, but we could always get better. So what I did today is I brought 2 guest speakers here. We have Louis Parada from the ADU Builder and HTA Construction and Development, and Mike Minassian from R&M Builders. Louis, you want to introduce yourself and give us a little idea of your experience in the construction world? You're muted, Louis.
I'm a licensed general contractor for the past 12 years. And since 2018, we started doing ADUs. I own the ADU Builder. We currently do about 20 ADUs a year, sorry. And so that's why Andrew had us here on this call.
Very good. Mike?
How's it going? Mike Minassian, R&M Builders. We're also licensed contractors. I've been in the industry for about 6 years. I actually work with my pops. He has about 20 years of experience. And we do everything from ADUs to single ADUs, conversions, duplexes, and so on.
Very good. Thank you, gentlemen. The purpose of this is really, as it says on the screen, identify the qualities to seek for in a good contractor, decode the process of getting bids and making decisions. And then we'll speak to Robert, who's going to talk about the experience and what you need to do from an owner standpoint. So Robert, we'll get to you in just a little bit. We're going to start with Louis, who is going to kind of talk about the role of the general contractor and really what part they play in the building your ADU. Louis?
Yeah. So we, as a general contractor, we typically come in once the plans are approved, and then we provide a bid to our clients. Some of our builds are design builds, so we're involved from the beginning, which is helpful to value engineer the projects, mitigate issues on the front end. But typically the process is that we're called in once plans are approved. We go to the site, we look at the site, do a site assessment, verify where the utilities connections are, our sewer, gas, water, electrical, and then we put a itemized proposal together that we share with the client. Our itemized proposal has about 120 line items, and every item is spelled out and it's quantified, and every item has its own pricing. Once that's done, we send that over to the clients, and then we review that, ask them if there's any scope misses, and we'll add anything there. And what we try to do is mitigate change orders on the back end.
All right, very good. So some of the important roles here that we have highlighted is communication, quality control, and project management. You know, with these three parts, someone's accepted a bid, and now you're ready to start. How do you see the role of the general contractor in communicating where we are in the process, making sure the quality stays well? And I guess that's just kind of falls into the scope of project management, where you're overseeing the entire process.
Yeah, so once that proposal is approved by the homeowner, we then assign a project manager to the project. The project manager creates a project schedule. And then we have a dedicated project manager on the project that visits the site at least 2 to 3 times a week. We send weekly emails to the clients on the schedules. If there's any slippage, anything that's lead times. So we have a dedicated project manager there. The project management manager also does quality control. So we're checking our subs. We sub out 100% of our work. And so our project manager also does our quality control.
Very good. All right, Mike, back to you.
All right.
We want to know the qualities that owners should seek for a contractor in order to be successful during this construction phase. You know, things like experience, back to communication. You'll see that we continue to talk about how important communication is, reliability and trustworthiness, and on top of that, attention to detail. So Mike, what qualities should a contractor that's going to be successful have?
I think certain qualities, like Louis said really well, is you need to be open with your customers. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter the dollar amount. They're spending a lot of money and they're expecting a certain finished product. So tying in again with quality control, that's our job. That's why we're getting paid to go ahead and make sure that all this is done properly. Experience, I think for experience, asking a contractor to see some of their work, to see like if you're doing hillside, interior remodels aren't going to really match up with it. So you would ask for more hillside projects to see how they work with caissons and so on and so forth. Reliability, how often does the contractor respond back to emails, phone calls, texts, whatever the case may be. And you can kind of gauge that in the bidding process. So once the same way that we're kind of interviewing the owners to see, you know, what type of people they also need to do the same thing to us.
That's really good. And I think it was really important that you pointed out the experience for like projects, right? So if you are building on a hillside, hopefully you've built on a hillside before. If you're building a garage conversion, that you've done this before, you know, it's the experience of actually doing what it is that the scope of work is, I think is pretty pivotal.
Yeah. And you can even, I mean, I've even had customers ask, do I have any references? And I'll happily give, you know, customers references for that specific type of project, and, you know, give my references a heads up that, hey, this person may call, just so that they're aware, and, you know, speak openly. We let our work kind of do the talking for us. So
yeah, I would have to agree with that. I think with both of you, we have taken people to projects to show like this is what we're doing right now, and that it gives you a showcase of what's happening. And I think that's really good to see. All right, Louis, I'm going to go back to you. You had spoke a little bit on the construction bids. You said you had 110 line items, and I'll say that Louis has a fairly drawn out construction budget that you may not see from everyone. And I think this is really important because different contractors have different approaches that they take, and they spend a lot of time on preparing this together. And many times people will reach out without any, you know, they may not even want to follow through. So you will see different varieties of construction bids, and there really isn't one standard. But Louis, you know, you've spent a lot of time on putting yours together. How have you come up with this, and why is it so important? And what can people do to compare the different types of construction bids they see when they're getting all different kinds to compare apples to apples?
Yeah. So our our proposal is broken down into subsections. So our first one is like our general trades, and that has foundation, framing, electrical, mechanical, plumbing, drywall, stucco, roof as just general trades. And those are typically lump sum items, or they'll say, like for the roof, they'll say how many squares of roof we're doing, the allowance for the roof. The windows will also show the window count. So if we were bidding a project with white vinyl windows, and we put there the allowances for white vinyl windows, and during the construction project you want to switch it to aluminum black windows, it's very easy to see where the change is, and then we could just do a change order for the difference of material. So that's the way it's broken down. We spell out the square footage of our flooring, the linear feet of our baseboard, how many doors and knobs. I mean, just very itemized. A lot of contractors really, especially for homeowners, I think investors are a little bit different, but for homeowners, they provide a one-page scope of work with the price at the bottom, and there's nothing's itemized. And so that's just, as a homeowner, I think that you should be very careful and really looking at the scope of work and understanding what you're getting charged for, and then quantifying an amount for each item. There's been times where a client of ours says, "Hey, my cousin is, let's say, a flooring vendor. I want him to do the flooring." We could easily remove the flooring line item from our proposal and have them do the flooring themselves. So that's just the way that we operate. We also like to be very transparent. Our proposal has our itemized all the way down, and then we have a profit and overhead line item at the bottom.
I saw Mike was laughing, and Mike, Mike does do closer to a one-page proposal. Maybe sometimes it is two, but I'll tell you, Mike, it's very, very common in the industry, and because you are busy out in the field running projects as well, that you as a business owner and a contractor have to do both of these. But Louis, what does the homeowner do when they have a 100-line item proposal and they have, maybe a 2-pager, and both could be great contractors, as both of you are, and have different approaches. But really, I think, can you speak on the inclusions, exclusions, and how to?
So a lot of the reasons why we do it this way is full transparency from the front, on the beginning. And so there's not a lot of going back and forth. A lot of times, and Mike would probably say this, but when you start the project, everyone's happy, and towards the end of the project, they're not really that happy. And so if the scope of work is itemized and what you're charging, it also helps us if we're tying it back to financial management, Andrew, is that we also create for the homeowners an AIA form, which is a schedule of values. And so when we're submitting for a draw, we're submitting based on the work that's done, and we're getting paid on each line item. So it's not like pay me 40,000. It's like we're showing them we're taking 5,000 from framing, 3,000 from electrical, 4,000 for roof, and then it ends at the end at, let's say, $40,000. And so for us, it's just it allows them to see the way that we bid. It also allows them to see how we're drawing on the funds as well.
Can you touch on, a high level of what inclusions, exclusions kind of are and what to look for?
Yeah, I mean, we include everything except for permit fees and appliances. Other than that, we're covering everything from start to finish. Like no blinds, no appliances, anything else that's not like construction related.
Great. All right, Mike, back to you. What is a change order? Why do they happen? Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad. Just,
I mean, change orders are, sorry, Andrews. Change orders are, like you said, like they're not good or bad. It's kind of how they come about. Like, for example, if we've said that we're gonna put, let's say this ADU has 4 windows, and then the owner's like, hey, I want to add 2 more windows for whatever reason. That is a change order. That was not part of the original plan. That was not even on the original set of plans. So we need to go ahead and basically create a new budget for that. But sometimes they happen not on purpose. Something will come up. For example, tear a wall down and there might be mold or whatever the case. We need to fix that. We can't just leave that alone. So you communicate with the owner and say, hey, look, this is what we found. This is the reason why we need to get rid of it. We need to take care of it. And this is how much it's going to cost. But we don't touch anything until the owner agrees to it, because then that's how things get kind of messy. The best way to kind of avoid them as far as the owner standpoint is, you know exactly what you want. You don't have last minute changes that you might need to go back to the city for. It's not going to cost you over your budget that you had planned already. And I think just knowing, obviously, anyone who's been in it knows that during construction things change. The owner might drive by a house and see something and, oh, I like this. I want to add this to my house too. We understand it's not on purpose, but we just want to make sure that they understand that they're the ones that kind of are in control of that aspect of the change order. We're not just trying to add change orders left and right just to kind of increase the balance for the entire project. There are contractors that do that. They have really low bids just to get into the project, but that's a completely different topic.
Yeah, I mean, I'll speak on that so you guys don't have to, but there is a strategy in the contracting world, and I'm sure anyone listening maybe has heard of it, but you bid lower than what you think the costs are because you're going to include change orders of things that may have not been included in the bid once you're kind of tied into it. This is something you don't always be able to detect, but I think one thing that you can do is you can call the references from the contractor and ask them, how many change orders did you have? And what were they for? Is it because you as the owner requested some additional windows? Or is it that maybe when they did a site inspection, they decided it was going to be half as much lumber and the first change order a week later was for more lumber?
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on that, Mike?
I think I think in order for these things to work, it's transparency and honesty between the owner, the contractor, even the designer, architect, whatever you want to call it. And that ruins reputations. That actually gives other contractors a bad name, kind of. So we've gone through it a couple times. I mean, I'm sure I'm sure Louis knows. But at the end of the day, you just have to put your head down. You have to do good work, good quality work. Make sure you're on time. Make sure you do the right things, and you should be fine at the end of the day.
I love it. Thank you, Mike. All right. Now for both of you, Louis and Mike. Louis, we'll start with you. What are some of the best practices and tips you can provide as a professional on a contractor on the key practices you think that are essential to the construction process? You brought up we start very friendly in the beginning and maybe we aren't all the way there at the end. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, I think just being transparent, being honest, keeping your word, making sure that the project doesn't stop, you keep going. Project management is very important. A lot of ADU companies, when they're not thinking this way. And so maybe the owner is operating managing the project. And for us, we have a different approach. We actually have, and as you know, Andrew, we have a dedicated project manager on all our projects. And so I think that's very important because even though they're ADUs and we think they're small projects, they all need attention. So doing that, we do 3-week look ahead schedules on the projects, where we're tracking what work is getting done and when it will be done. On there, we have critical path items, which could be lead time items, maybe your LADWP meter setting. It could be if we're doing multifamily ADUs, the gearboxes are taking 12 months to get here. Even six gang meter boxes are taking a long time. So catching all that for us, it's I think project management is the key to a lot of this work and just planning ahead. And I think that's what would make our customers happy is when we're on top of everything.
Very good. Okay, Mike, next question's for you. What common mistakes do you see being made from homeowners during the construction phase to maybe slow down the process, make it more costly, things that could be avoided during this phase in order to make it a smoother process?
I think in order to make it a smoother process is knowing exactly what they want, not kind of going in phases. For example, when foundation, framing, uh, electric. I mean, no, yeah. Once foundation and framing is in, they kind of don't have a say. But once electrical, like, hey, this light switch is here in the plans, but I decided to move it on this side, and this is after rough electric has been done. So now we have to call our electrician back to go to move this, or this faucet was here. It looks great, but can we move it to the opposite side? Or things like that is what slows projects down. Things like that is where it it matters also because, for example, sure, we'll do it one time, maybe another time, but after a while, when if we see that it's kind of a pattern, well, every time we call these guys out, for example, they might charge like so, or if it's a big change, for example, if everything is wired to, let's say, one fuse, for example, and oh no, I wanted all on independent fuses. Well, we have to now rewire everything, all the material we have to throw away and purchase everything all over again. So if you want it to be done quickly, if you want your contract to be in and out, and get everything that you want, stay on schedule, like Louis says, just have that all ready. Know exactly what you want, um, and let the contractor kind of do what they need to do. And we give reports too all the time. It's an email or it's a text message, or we call them or we ask them to meet us on site. And every time there'll be something small like, hey, can we move this light 2 inches to the right? We can, of course we can, and we will. But um, if they kind of get layered on top of one another, that's when things kind of slow down.
Got it. Thank you, Mike. All right,
Mhm.
Louis. Last question to you. How do you recommend a homeowner prepare for these challenges and unexpected issues? And before that, I'll preface it like, yes, ADUs are small houses, but anything construction is hard, and the
Correct.
size of it doesn't make it, any different.
Yeah.
Agree.
I guess for challenges, I think the biggest challenge might be if there's change orders, and in new construction, we really don't see that. We'll see challenges more in multifamily ADUs where there's conversions and we're dealing with existing utilities and all these things. For challenges, I think one of the biggest thing might be change order costs. And we recommend our homeowners or investors to have about 5% contingency set aside for potential changes or maybe upgrades that they would like to do. And then with unexpected issues, I think it's just communicating well, like, hey, this issue came up, but we're gonna resolve it. We've had projects that we've converted garages in 2 months, and we've had conversions of 300 square feet that's taken 9 months. We did one together, Andrew, I think in Alhambra, where the city said, oh, we want fire sprinklers here. And so even though the project took a long time, at the end of the day, the client was happy. And it was just a communication of it. It's like some things you can't control, but if you communicate and you stay on top of it and tell them, hey, we're working on this, and there's just a lot of things that could arise, especially in smaller cities. So City of LA is great. I think Long Beach has been good. Downey's been great, but there's like City of LA with the LEWP, Alhambra, or South Pasadena, where they're asking sometimes for fire sprinklers. And so things like that. And then they ask you those while you're building, which is even
Okay.
like you're already in construction. Now they're asking for additional things. So just I think over communicating it's what's gonna help with these homeowners and our clients as well.
All right, gentlemen, I'd like to thank you both. Now we're going to kick it over to Robert. Hey, Robert, how are you?
Good. How's everyone?
Very good. Robert, tell us a little bit about yourself. First, I'll say, what you're doing, and your story is extremely impressive. And we're not really going to dive too much into that, but, you've transitioned over from a W-2 employee to a full-time housing provider. So just do a quick rundown of what you got going on, and real quick how you're here today.
Yeah, I was a W-2 worker, invested in real estate 10 years ago. Once the 2020 ADU law changed with the parking requirements, it gave a lot of flexibility. So I started using that as my investment strategy to make it work. Real estate's very expensive in LA, so I used ADUs to make it more affordable to afford these multifamily properties. My investment strategy is buying multifamily properties and building 2 to 3 ADUs on each property. We are planning to build 8 this year. We started with doing 1 a year, 2 a year, 3 a year. Now we're going to do 8 in the next year. So it's our investment strategy, and it's been great to us overall.
Awesome. All right. So the first order of business here, what is the owner's role in the construction process? As the owner, when you're going about this, how do you see your role in order to make this, as effective as possible?
It's really being prepared. I think as an owner, you have to have your ducks in a row. One thing I see a lot of owners make a mistake is they don't have money placed, or they don't have money organized to be able to do the build. I say get that aligned. Figure out if you have to take a HELOC, a refinance. Get your money aligned first. Once you have that, start setting expectations, responsibilities, having an idea of what kind of tile you want, what kind of finishes you want. It's going to help the process overall for yourself and the contractor.
No, I think that's very important to make sure that you have the budget in line first. I think sometimes it's difficult to even understand how much you need to have, and maybe thinking you need to have 3 bids because you're going to beat that up in the very beginning. But I think, you can get an overall reaching scope and then make sure you have the money in line. Would you agree?
Agree.
Yeah,
Totally.
absolutely. All right. Here we go. So we heard a lot about communication from our general contractors, Louis and Mike. What is your thoughts on, how effective communication can be, how important it is, and for scheduling and addressing issues as they come up?
Yeah, I think set clear expectations with the contractor. If it's the contractor you're working directly or the project manager, there should be one person you should be working with at all times. Also, it's very important that you visit the site as the owner. You visit the site, see what's going on, ask questions. Even if you're learning, just ask questions. Everything's going. You'll be surprised what you see once you're at the site. Schedule regular meetings. I would say at least a minimum once a week with the project manager or contractor. It's very important. You have to see this is a business. You are investing a lot of money. You're spending $200,000, $250,000 on building some of these ADUs. You have to meet with them weekly, ensure that the project's going aligned, everything's going aligned to what you guys agreed on the contract. So communication is very important. Make sure you're communicating at least on a weekly basis. Also, be engaged and visit the site regularly. It's very important. I see a lot of people just want to step back, want the contractor to do everything, but there's got to be communications on both sides for this to work effectively.
Great. All right. We spoke about making sure you had the money for the budget, but as I've seen, sometimes the budget goes over, right? And so how do you manage that budget, those expectations, and also know that there's no way to absolutely be perfect in this?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing is understand what you want and finishes. I think a lot of mistakes, a lot of owners see, they believe the contractor is a designer as well. The contractor is going to help you install whatever you want and get the project to the finish line, but they're not going to design it for yourself. And I see a lot of people make mistakes where they go high end on the finishes and their budget gets skyrocketed out there. Get an idea before you start what kind of tile you want, what kind of flooring you want. And depending if you're going to live there or if a renter is going to live there, you're going to have different choices. So there's very good department stores like Floor and Decor where have a lot of options, have free designing services where you could get an idea how much everything costs. Also with your contractor, when you're building a contract, if they're going to be buying the supplies, get an idea how much per square foot they're going to reimburse you. So that way you can know what your budget is. If they're reimbursing you $4 a square foot for flooring, that gives you an idea. If you're going to buy $6 a square foot, then you're going to be over budget. So get an idea there, educate yourself, and be involved in the decision making of the finished products. That's the biggest thing. I see a lot of people go higher end on the finishes, and that's what really throws off your budget.
Really interesting. All right. So quality control and inspections that you had touched on, visiting the site and how important that is. Those regular inspections and that progress, and being there. For those of us who are building in their backyard, maybe it's easy to just walk out the back door and see what's going on, but that's not the case for everyone. So how do you maintain your quality control? And also when inspections are happening between either the city or the contractor, how do you address those?
So I always ask for a time schedule of how long the project's going to take to complete it. I would like to know each inspection when they estimate that time will be. And that gives me an idea where I don't have to keep on following the contractor. When is the roofing going to be done? When is the flooring going to be done? I have a timeline, and if they're past that, I start meeting with them going over. Also, I love to get feedback on how the inspections went. What were the changes that were needed? What was called out? So that way you know how the progress of the construction is going. I think that's the biggest thing. You going every week, you going twice a week. I would say a minimum twice a week visit the site just to make sure quality control's there, people are there. You want to make sure your contractor's there on a regular basis, because you'll see sometimes there might be weeks where people don't go, and that could throw your timeline off as well. So I think having a timeline schedule provided by your contractor will help a lot, just work on communication, also on timeline and quality control as well.
So for my own interest, what's your thoughts on owners being there for the city inspections?
I personally don't do that. If you're going to hire a contractor, let them do their job.
Okay.
I personally wouldn't. I personally, I'm not a contractor, but I wouldn't want to be there right behind the contractor doing their job. You're hiring them based on their expertise. You also don't want to micromanage them, because that's going to create some, it's not going to help the relationship either. You hire a contractor, let them do their job, and then just communicate. That's where communication's there. If you're going to be at the inspection, then you should might as well just do owner builder and hire subs for it at that point. But I think just let their contractor do their job, and the communication, that's where it's very important on that end.
All right. So you're getting near the completion. And I think something I've definitely learned in this progress, the end steps are the hardest steps. And sometimes it takes the longest. So when we're finalizing the project, how do you go about going through the final inspection, creating a punch list, and really making sure, like, when you're handed over this finished product, you got it to the standards that you expected when you paid for this?
Yeah, I think setting the expectation at the beginning, when the contract is developed, once you do a final walkthrough and all punch list is completed, you make final payment. Make sure it's very important that you leave a good portion of the payment at the end, because if you pay your contractor at the end and the job is not complete, good luck in trying to get them to come back, because in their eyes, the job is complete once you make the final payment. After that, it's additional work for them. So I think once they get final inspection, there still might be some little things that need to be completed, some touch-ups, some gardening work, some finishes on the outside. I usually, once final inspection's done and we get the final, I make a punch list. I go with my wife, we go to the site, we check all the drawers are working, hot water, we make sure everything's up to standard what we want. We then make a list, we email to the contractor, and we let them know, can you make these changes? Usually that's where communication works out. They make the changes within a week because they want to get the final payment, and then everyone's happy. They get the final payment. All the changes got done, and you're able to just complete that project from there. But I think it's very crucial that you write everything down, email them so they know exactly. I send pictures. Hey, this needs to be touched up. It's behind the unit, and I send them a picture. By doing that, you're setting expectation. You're making it easier for the contractor because they can send it to their team and they can complete the work in a faster pace.
So that punch list is just that. You have walked the entire project. You've seen things that need to be either touched up, repaired, and then you do what? You send it to the contractor, maybe walk with them again. How do you handle this?
Yeah, I set up a final walkthrough. I walk through, go over everything, and I usually send a list and I check mark it off. There might be some things that still need to be done. Depending on how long the list, if it's a couple items and they send me pictures done, I might just send it to them. I always do another walkthrough at the end to confirm everything's been done, completed, because as myself, I rent out these ADUs. So the tenant's going to complain if the hot water is not hot enough, if the water pressure is not high enough, those things. So you want to make sure you add those to the punch list, get them cleared off, and you do a final walkthrough, everything's done and clear that everything's been completed.
All right. Now I'm going to open this up to anyone that may have some questions in the live feed, but also I'm going to open it up between the three of you, and I'm going to ask a few questions as well. So, Mike, I'm going to ask you, with what Robert said as an owner, what are your thoughts on all this, and how could an owner, take and implement what he said and be successful?
I honestly loved everything that Robert said. Robert, one thing is that the trust issue that between owner and contractor. Like you said, like let them do their job. That's why you're hiring somebody. And once a little bit of friction starts between the two, it's a miserable process. And I'm sure anybody, whether you've done it or not, could only imagine there's people coming to your house or to your property to build something and you're not happy with them or they're not happy with you and they're not going to put their heart into it. They're going to kind of just try to patch everything up just to be done with it as soon as possible. So um, I agree with all of that, honestly. So if I personally believe if you follow those little things, and that's another thing too that I like that he said, we're here to build whatever is either on the plans or whatever we've discussed. I, my taste is going to be different than what you may want to do. Um, I can't design certain things. Yes, I might. I'll give you my opinion if you ask, but that's about it. You know what I mean? Um, and the last thing that he mentioned, oh man, I lost it. Mm,
No worries.
I'll get back to you.
Okay, perfect. So, Louis, I'm gonna go back to you. I think what Robert said, there was a key point that contractors are not designers. And while, I think you probably have some solid taste, your taste is not everyone's taste. So how do you deal with maybe not having an idea of what finishes and what's in place, and how can an owner kind of get ready for that and not put all that position on you and really get a product that they want?
Yeah, so we try to provide a spec book at the beginning of the project of different either modern finish or farmhouse type of finishes. And if not, we also ask the owners to give us pictures of what they want, and then we'll put a spec book together, matching what they want, and then we'll show them samples, bring them samples, and then get approval, not like the day before installation, but a lot sooner. That way, if they don't like the material, we could source other materials for them. There's sometimes homeowners bring us tile that's $6 a foot, and we're able to source it for $3 a foot. But we always ask them to provide us specs sooner rather than later.
Okay. Robert, got a question for you. When you are interviewing general contractors, can you give us some pro tips from your side on like how you make the decisions on who you're interviewing and how you make that final selection?
Yeah, no, I always review. I try to ask them, get an idea of what projects they have going on, if they've worked in the city. For me, it's very important if you've worked in the city. I do a lot of work in the city of Burbank. Every city works differently. Every city has different requirements. So to me, it's very important that they've had experience in the city that I'm working with. Also, how long they've been working, how many jobs they currently have. To me, it's very important. If they have a lot of jobs and they have a smaller team, that can mean that my project might get delayed if they try to take on a couple jobs, depending on how size their team. So it's really contingent on the contractor on that end. But once I review the bids, I do like bids that are detailed on that end, so I can see how much everything's costing and I get an idea. For myself, I do price out everything. I do look cost per square foot, and I try to make a decision that way. But there's a lot of different aspects. Referrals is something that I go by as well. That gives me, more value if it's referred to me from another investor or friends and family. So a lot of those factors are attributed to the final decision.
There's a question for you, Robert. How many general contractors have you gone through with all of your projects? And if it's been more than one, why has it? Why have you worked with different people?
Oh, I've worked with a lot of general contractors. Sometimes, you work with different people. Sometimes you have different jobs going on too. So might have different jobs and I might hire different contractors. I might have a contractor for landscaping outside compared to a contractor just building ADU. Or if I want to build a pool in my backyard and I want to build an ADU with it, I might get a separate contractor for that. So, but I've worked with contractors before where when first in 2020, I had a great contractor that worked with me. I had him for a couple ADUs, but then he started falling behind. His project management skills weren't as strong. So one project that should have taken 6 months took me 14 months because of lack of project management. So sometimes contractors fall behind, they lose people, they're not as organized, they might have personal issues going on. that might impact your project. So there's a lot of attributes there, but it's always good to try different contractors. Once you have a contractor that works, reuse them. But you're gonna, as if you build ADUs like an investor like myself, you're gonna have to have different contractors work with you, and that's okay. You know, some contractors might take bigger jobs. They might be busier where they want bigger jobs now. So that happens as well. If I have a 200 square foot ADU and it might not be in their interest to do a job that small. So things like that might happen as well.
All right, I'm going to ask you one more question, Robert, and then a final question for everyone. But you know, this, I guess I'll be speaking for you, but this whole ADU world has slightly been life-changing for you. Can you give a touch on, like, you know, why should someone build an ADU, and how it's kind of changed you and your wife's, you know, way that you've done things, and where you're at so far?
Yeah, why? Cash flow. So especially if you're in Los Angeles, what you could rent for these ADUs, it's amazing. If you have the land already, if you have a property, building on it makes total sense. I started building, I had my primary house and I had a rental. I converted my primary house into ADU, I converted a rental into 2 ADUs, and then I rented them out and I bought another house. I was able to grow slowly that way, and then I started buying multifamilies. But ADUs has changed my life completely as an investor. I bought my first property thinking that once I retire, I'll have one property, but then the ADU law opened up a whole new avenue for me growth wise, and now I'm doing full-time multifamily ADUs. So it's really, if you have the land, take advantage of it. That's the most expensive part of California, and it's only going to appreciate more and more. So build on it. And that's going to only add value to your property, where you could eventually take that equity out and keep on building. So there's so many benefits to ADU. It's honestly, it's changed my life completely.
Awesome. I love watching the progress. Question for you, Louis. On average, is there a major difference in the cost or time with converting an existing structure, such as a garage conversion, versus a ground up ADU where you're kind of building from a blank slate?
Yeah, so it depends. I've done ADUs where garage conversions where we're basically rebuilding the whole thing, where the footing is only 6 inches as opposed to 12 inches that's required, or 18 inches. So it just all depends on the site and how the garage, the existing condition of the garage is. So yeah, it could either, I've done conversions that take me 2 months, and I've done conversions that take me a lot longer than that. And then I've also done new construction under 3 months. So it just depends.
Yeah, it's unfortunate we can't really just say like a one size fits all, but it really depends on what the existing conditions are.
Yeah. So Andrew and I did the garage conversions on Pacific, and all the exterior walls stayed, the stucco stayed, the roof stayed. It was all in good condition, and we're able to do 2 ADUs fairly fast. But then there's other ADUs where you have to just completely almost remove them all and then build walls one by one.
Now, I know this conversation has kind of been towards the owner, but I think it's really important because both of you have been in business and been fairly successful, and we've seen contractors come and go. Can you give us some insight that you would for future contractors and existing contractors on their business in the ADU world, on things to look out for and how to really level up to the next level?
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
For me, it's just being transparent, being organized. Don't try to cheat the customer to try to save a little bit. Robert brought up a good point. If you're too busy, don't try to take on that project and delay somebody else's progress for their property. Be open and learn. Like when I first started, one thing I kind of realized from majority of the people that I knew that currently were contractors, nobody really wanted to help. Nobody really wanted to get ideas from one another. But I mean, I met Louis, and right off the bat, he was like, "Hey, man, like if you have any questions, feel free to call and ask." And it's not because I'm trying to, let's say, take his clientele or anything like that. It's just we're just helping each other out. If he needs anything, for example, he could reach out to me, and so on and so forth. So I think just contractors need to understand that our showroom is each and every project that we do. So we do an ADU, someone's gonna go there and see it and they say, "Oh wow, great! Like who did this? Mike made it, Lewis made it, or whoever the case may be." So as long as you keep that in mind, I think that you can constantly grow. But as you're growing, and if you grow quickly, don't lose sight of quality either.
Louis, what do you think?
Yeah, as a growing general contractor in the ADU space, I think it's just scaling slow, making sure your systems and processes are in order. Your bidding, your project management, and always try to get better every day. We now provide company cam, so we take pictures of sites. Most of our clients have access to company cam, so they could see the progress of the picture of the projects each day, and just try to get better every day. We've Andrew knows, but we scale. I mean, we bid on 10 jobs and we take on 2 jobs, and we're not really trying to. I mean, we have a high volume, but we don't really just sign any contract that's in front of us, because we want to provide good service to our clients.
It's great. Robert, when you started this, what knew then to what you know now, I bet it is worlds apart. What are some of the biggest things that you've kind of learned in that process from that very first ADU built to all the ones that you're doing now?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things when you're submitting plans and you're working with the architect, there might be some things that cities might not know about ADUs. So they might tell you you can't build that, and that might not be true. So you have to fight it. So my first ADU was in front of my house, and the city told me you can't build that. I said, no, California law says I can build an ADU in front of my house. And we were actually the first front ADU that's ever been in the city. I had to go through a lot of emails, a lot of referencing the code of California, but it's assuming that. Also, fees have gone up a lot for permits for building and stuff like that. When I first did my first ADU, I think I paid $8,000 in permits. Now I'm averaging for per ADU about 25,000. So it's gone up a lot. So that's something as well. Estimate budget for that, because that could be a significant cost that you didn't plan for.
Okay, very good. So I guess back to that question, you've worked in Burbank in that area. Would you say that municipality may be easier than some of the other ones you've worked on?
They all have their pros and cons. Some might be good at some stuff, some might not. When I started doing it in 2020, I think in 2020 was a very difficult year to judge people because of COVID. Everyone was delaying. Permits were taking me longer overall. I think some cities picked it up earlier and fixing some of these issues. I've seen overall most cities are doing better with it. I see it most with the cities that let you do electronic and submitting to plans. That makes that process so much easier. So there's different cities like LA that you could do the virtual meetings, which helps a lot. There's some cities like Burbank where you have to walk in and ask questions sometimes. You can't get a hold of somebody. So it really depends, to be honest with you. But I could say most cities have improved significantly since 2020. That's 100% for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, question for Mike and Louis. This is something that gets asked probably to me every day, maybe you. But what does it cost to build per square foot? And why is that not really the easiest question to answer? Mike, you want to start?
Yeah, I mean, the problem with it is back to what Lewis said earlier, is I can tell you, for example, let's just say, just to throw numbers out there, that it'll cost $150 or $200 a square foot to do a conversion. But once you start looking at the footing and how the footing needs to change and this needs to change, and after a while the cost of square foot goes up, and then the customer will be like, what happened? I know for, again, things vary and stuff too, but I know that for us, as far as new construction goes, we're somewhere around like anywhere from 250 to 300 a square foot. If they want a little bit more higher end finishes, then it could go up to maybe 320, depending on what they want. And for ADUs, it's tough, man. For conversions, it's tough. It depends on if there's gonna be an addition to it, or if, like Louis said, we're gonna rip everything up, or if we're just gonna do basically everything interior and a little bit of exterior to it. So, Yeah, that's kind of where we're at.
Louis, I mean, you could give us the answer. What's it
Yeah,
cost
so-
per square foot?
Our for us, we're around $250 to $300 a foot, the same. Smaller projects under like 400 square feet, the price per square foot is higher. Just because the square footage of the ADU is smaller. So if I was doing 1,000 square foot ADU, my sewer run cost is gonna be, for example, $15,000 to run our sewer line. But if I was doing a 400 square foot ADU, my sewer line cost is gonna be the same. And so the price per square foot on the lower square footage ADU is going to be higher. And it just, yeah, there's a lot of variables. City of Long Beach, one of the questions was like what city municipality it's more pro ADUs. City of Long Beach is great for us. We've gotten ADUs approved over the counter. We've gotten new construction ADUs approved in under 4 months. So there's a lot of good things happening there. And whether there's the other question. So, sorry.
All right. I think one final question, Robert. What do you want to leave everyone that's watching this with like your number
I couldn't
one,
hear you.
your number one tip?
What was the question?
It's for Robert. Louis, we'll come back to you.
Oh, number one tip is build your ADU. If you have hesitation, figure it out.
Do it.
You will not regret it. It's the best decision. Inflation's going to hit us even more in the future. It's going to cost even more. If Luis is telling us it's going to be 250, 300, I guarantee you the next 5 years is going to be 400 because everything's getting more expensive. Build now, worry about it later, and I guarantee you won't regret it. I've never heard of someone say they regret building their ADU. So,
Not once, not one time. Mike, what do you want to leave us with? What's your number one thing?
I think the biggest thing that I think homeowners should really focus on is learning how to work with your contractor and your architect or designer, and giving a little bit of trust. And then after that, that's when kind of everything flows smoothly.
I like it. Louis, what's the one thing you want to leave us with? Gotta unmute yourself.
Just to make sure you vet your contractor. I'm a contractor, but the more questions you ask, the better. It's a big investment, and we want you to be successful and be able to build your ADU.
So I want to thank all three of you for being here. I mean, the goal of this is for everyone to get some knowledge, because a lot of times this is the first time we're doing any of this. The plight of the backyard developer is really sometimes the first time you're ever building anything. And often, besides buying your house, the most expensive decision you've ever made. And so having the right people in place, knowing, a skill set that you don't do every day, we hope that this helped. So Louis, thank you for being here. Louis's contact information, you can follow him on Instagram, the ADU Builders. You can follow HTA Construction or Louis Parada. Mike, thank you for being here. Mike's email,
Thanks for having us.
his website's there. Definitely follow him on Instagram as well. And Robert, thank you for being here. Getting that perspective. I'm really glad that we included you as well, because I think it's important to see both sides. Definitely follow Robert on Instagram, and you'll really see what the challenges that he faces, but the experience, but how rewarding it really is. You can follow me, you can reach out to me, but as the goal isn't so much just to work with us, it's to build everywhere. ADUs are no longer just being a California thing. They are being allowed throughout the United States, and we're seeing it as a new way to add by right affordable housing at a lower cost, and really, like, that's what we're all about here at Abundant Housing, is abundance and creating more housing for all. So thank you, gentlemen, for being here. Thank you, everyone that watched this live, that came to the first session. Apologies for the rescheduling of the third section, but I think it'll be very worth it, because the concepts of what the city does during these 4 to 6 months. It can be mysterious, but there is a reason why it takes the time it does. Josh, is there anything else you'd like to leave us with?
No, thank you so much. I guess I'll just let everyone know that we will get this uploaded, and so that way everyone can watch it, and we'll also be sending out the slide deck probably by end of day tomorrow. And like we said at the beginning, we are working on rescheduling that missing session there. So look out in your inboxes. There's going to be a message coming through very soon that says exactly when that's going to be. So just stick with us. Thank you so much, Andrew. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, our lovely guests, and thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. I hope everyone has a joyful long weekend.
Appreciate
Thank you, guys. Thank you, everyone.